welcome back to another episode of Member Spotlight. My name is Adrian Alexander from Free the Slaves, Secretariat to the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. On this episode of Member Spotlight, I have the distinct pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Olivia Smith, and we're going to be talking about some of the work that she has been doing. Dr. Smith is from the wonderful island of Barbados initially, and she is now based in Canada. So she'll give us a little bit of information about herself and that same transition, but also really getting to know her as a person. She's one of the subject matter experts who has joined the Caribbean Coalition, and it's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And tell us, who is Dr. Olivia Smith? A little background on who you are.
Thank you for that question. Well, I'm an expert in political science, public policy, and with specialized focus on human trafficking and migration. My career spans working in academia, working with international organizations such as the United Nations, and of course, CARICOM Secretariat in the region, and McGill University here in Canada. And currently, I am with the United Nations Association, working on the Sustainable Development Goals here in Canada, the Toronto region. I am interested in finding solutions to the troubling and bad thing called human trafficking. And I've been striving every day to see how I can contribute not only in the region but internationally to help us to fix this.
Thanks so much. What would have led you into anti-trafficking work? Because you certainly have a broad range of experience, but what do you call what would have brought you into that area especially?
What brought me into this is a very interesting journey, really. I was an immigration officer in Barbados for 10 years, and I met a lot of women, migrant women, who had very hard stories that revealed there were deep vulnerabilities to exploitation, and this made me curious. And so at that point in time, I was doing my first degree at the university, and I said I want to study this more, and I sought to research it and so on. So as time went by, I really got into it, and I got to the point where I began teaching labor migration and trafficking at the University of the West Indies. I was not satisfied with that, and I wanted to do more. So I decided to, in going on to do my doctorate, that I wanted to see, internationally what was happening, and I became a fellow at the University of Oxford, and enforced migration, and there I really, really solidified my learning about it. And then I decided to transition into advocating about trafficking, because trafficking is something that it is there, but because it's a silent crime, many people in our communities don't know about it. And so I got into that. I then established a foundation during the very difficult time of COVID period, and I was able to work to help to rescue suspected victims of trafficking from across the region, and to work with international agencies and regional bodies on that. I've then moved to Canada, and at McGill University, I continued my work in that area. And now I am working in the community here in Ontario to promote advocacy against the backdrop that President Trump's mass migration uh, actions, or the what can happen as a result of that we are looking at how we can plan for mass migration, human trafficking, and especially unaccompanied minors in such a situation. So I'm continuing to work and to engage with stakeholders as to what solutions we can have. And for the Caribbean, I'm continuing to monitor what is happening there and the possible impact of persons not who only will be deported, but the crimes that come along sometimes with persons who are deported in that space.
Thank you so much. I mean, one of the challenges, of course, that we experience in the Caribbean is brain drain. A lot of our brilliant scholars, such as yourself, find greener pastures in other territories and they don't look back to continue to help. So it's always a blessing to chat with people like yourself who are doing that. You're continuing to look at what's happening in the Caribbean and as things develop in North America, and you appreciate the impacts that those things can have on us, and you're there to intervene and to provide insights. So I really thank you for that. But what are some of your main accomplishments, do you think? I know you mentioned a foundation and doing tremendous work even with the UN on the SDGs. But if you look back and you have to identify, let's say, three huge things that you think are big wins that you may have contributed to regionally or internationally, what would you select?
So I think in terms of wins, I really think in terms of honor. It was my honor last year to lead the drafting of the CARICOM Regional Migration Policy Framework. As you know, the CARICOM Migration Policy Framework was mandated for by the heads of government to CARICOM. I was able to engage with a lot of stakeholders from across the member states to get a real sense of what migration means to them and the impact and the necessary things that need to be put in place to make sure that it is sustainable and it benefits all in the region, including the persons who move. That was very important to me. One of the other important wins for me, as you would put it, was being able to present a side event of the United Nations Human Rights Council on the issue of states victimizing or criminalizing victims of trafficking. What usually happens, despite the UN protocols having provisions for this, is that persons who commit crimes under duress from their traffickers, they become charged for the crimes. And really and truthfully, the UN protocols have spoken about that, but states are yet to adhere in any great way to that. So I was able to speak to the council with respect to that, and I thought that that was very important. Another thing for me was that here in Quebec, I was able to successfully convene a very large stakeholder meeting on the behalf of the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the contemporary forms of slavery. That was very successful, and the stakeholders were very engaged. Those are just some of the wins. But if I came to the day to day thing, changing and impacting lives, having women come to me and say, I'm doing better. I'm doing better because you or members of your team were there for me when I thought that there was no way either for escape or for me to see how to improve my lives or my children's life. For me, that is the real win, touching lives and making a difference.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, that's what we do this for, really, to impact individual lives. Policy, yeah, but if it doesn't drill down into impacting individual lives, what's the purpose, So thank you so much for sharing that. And what are some of the things that you're working on now? Things that you think have tremendous potential to really grow and impact at regional and international levels. You mentioned the UN SDGs and the work that you're doing there in Canada. But anything else that you think you'd like to share with us?
Yes. I'm currently, besides working on the SDGs, as I said, I'm working here in Ontario, looking at the implications of mass migration on Canada, mass migration from the US across to Canada. But for the Caribbean, I'm currently working on looking at what and where we are at with respect to the implementation of the UN protocols. Different Caribbean countries are at different stages of implementing the UN protocols on trafficking. I think some 20 plus years on, that there needs to be a review of the laws and the policies, just a general how are we doing. And this is an area that I really think that I would like to work on with some. NGOs and some other bodies, some international organizations, regional organizations, for the simple reason if we are going to be providing policy responses, if we are going to be planning, we need to know where the countries are at and where they need to go. And so that assessment needs to be done. And so I'm working on that. We know that some countries are doing a lot, but some are just doing the minimum. And we can look at the US State Department's report on trafficking, the annual reports, and get a very good sense from there. But we need to hear from the countries themselves, their effort to make some sort of assessment. So that's where I'm focused now, so that I'm in a better position to advise on what needs to happen. One of the things I'm also looking at is continued public awareness and advocacy around this for the officials, the government officials. I think marrying that discussion with UN Sustainable Development Goals and the commitment to 2030 is a conversation that needs to be had. But in the community, we also need to be having more conversations about what trafficking looks like. I think this is very important because we are entering some economic turbulence. And I think, as you know, there's a growing number of labor trafficking cases comparative to sex trafficking. Not that there has been a decrease in the sex trafficking, but labor trafficking is becoming more visible. And so, how can we talk to the community about protecting themselves or telling law enforcement what they're seeing? Or helping them to have resources in the community through NGOs and so to deal with this. And so I want to continue to work in the Caribbean for us to raise awareness for those who are affected and for those who are decision makers.
That's powerful, Olivia. And what I think this year is the 25th year since the Palermo Protocol and the UN Transnational Organized Crime Convention. So it is very timely, a quarter of a century later, for us to look to see where we are in the region insofar as the implementation of the protocol. I know some of the countries may have signed on shortly after. I know Trinidad and Tobago, I think, was in 2007 or thereabouts. But legislation didn't come until, for us, 2011, and then proclaimed in 2013. So there's that type of staggering that would occur, I guess, across the region. But clearly, with 20, 25 years on, there is a sense of accountability that I think governments need to give to the public, especially on a matter such as this. I would love to work along with you on something like that, and I'm sure some of our viewers also would love to have that opportunity. So, how can someone reach out to you, Olivia, and make contact if they want to partner with you, or donors, if you wish to contribute funding for some of these initiatives that Olivia is working on is a great opportunity. How can they reach you?
Oh, I can be reached at my email contact, which I'm sharing here with you in the chat, Olivia Smithaway at gmail.com. I can also be connected on LinkedIn. I'm right there. I'm easily accessible. I will respond. And I would be happy to work along and to share what I know with any organization that's working on these things or want to work on these things, because many of the times we are always looking at resources as the solution, but really it's the will to do. And once we have the will to do and to continue to do the good work that organizations such as yours have been doing, and I must take this opportunity to commend Free the Slaves, because I've been around your work for some time and I've seen a massive move and improvement in the work that you're doing in the region in quite a quick time. And so I'm very, very impressed that you are doing this work and it's very much needed. And I'm here to support the work of your and other organizations.
Thank you so much, Olivia. One final question. We have so many Caribbean people in Canada. What sort of relationship do you have with the diaspora there? Do you think that they also need to be made aware of what's happening back home?
Well, I would have to say I don't have as big as connection with them as I would like to because I was living in Quebec for the last few years and I've just moved here to Ontario. So I'm trying to find my feet. But what I've been doing is I've been meeting a couple Barbadians, for example, along the way, lots of Jamaicans. And so I'm engaging with Caribbean people. I'm not just engaging with my diaspora because we are one people at the end of the day. I've been meeting people from Ghana, I've been meeting people from everywhere, and I'm engaging them. I'm very much engaging stakeholders, and through stakeholders, I am meeting Caribbean people who are saying, yes, this is something that we want to talk about and we want to know about. So there is scope for this.
That is so important. It's like you, a lot of them may have um, some knowledge through social media or things that family members are saying, and they just want to know how can we make a difference. So I trust that our diaspora members would be able to make contact with you at your email address or on LinkedIn and really connect to say, Olivia, how can we help in this tremendous work that you're doing? Yeah,
I hope so. And as I said, I'm happy to connect to support anything that's out there, any work that's out there that's being done, not just for people to connect with me about what I'm doing, but I also want to support what existing out there or what people would like to do in the area. And that's very important. Last week, I connected through Brampton Invest. I connected with an expert in sustainable development, and it was good talking to her and learning from her, and I want to be able to do more to support such work. And in the Caribbean, I think that we need to be promoting, advocating the SDGs some more because 2030 is around the corner, and promoting them and connecting it to migration and connecting it to the whole thing of trafficking and the importance of managing these things because they impact our economies.
very true. Very true. And I trust that as others tune in and they hear that invitation, that they too will reach out to you, as you said, and ask you, Olivia, can you help us with this, especially in terms of research and really bring that wealth of experience that you have, as well as your networking, which is fantastic, to be able to empower other organizations as we all look towards our common goal, really a safer, much more prosperous, and for me, much more compassionate Caribbean. I think we need to see that. All in all, we need to see that. But thank you so much, Olivia. It has been a pleasure sitting down and chatting with you for these few minutes. I know we will definitely be doing this again because I want to get some more information from you as your work continues to develop. And as you mentioned, that review of the Caribbean countries and the SDGs after 25 years, I think that is something that we can look at for the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons for our virtual conference this year. I think that would be an excellent topic to explore. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think so too. And thank you for having me. It is indeed my pleasure to have been here.
Thank you again. And folks, if you are looking at our YouTube channel and you're seeing this interview, this is part of our podcast series on Member Spotlight, where we highlight members of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. So see you in the next one. Bye.